She stood on the corner of 8th and Madison for hours. Hair white as frost. Skin thin and creased like old paper. A wool coat wrapped around her tiny frame, buttoned wrong. Sleeves rolled up unevenly. No phone.
No bag.
Just an old leather purse clutched tight to her chest, and a lost look in her pale, gray eyes. Cars honked. People passed. Some glanced, most didn't. One man said, "She probably escaped from somewhere," before walking away with his coffee. Another muttered, "City's full of weirdos," and turned his music louder. She said nothing, just stood there, looking like she was searching for something or someone, in a place that had already forgotten her. And then he saw her. Jamal was 17. Hoodie, beat-up sneakers, earbuds dangling around his neck. He wasn't trying to be a hero. He was just on his way back from a part-time shift at the auto shop. His backpack was heavy with greasy work clothes, and his stomach growled for dinner. But something made him stop. Maybe it was the way she looked at the traffic light, like she couldn't remember what green meant. Maybe it was how nobody even slowed down. Or maybe, and he wouldn't admit this out loud, maybe it was because he saw his grandma in her. The one who raised him. The one who always remembered his birthday, even after the dementia started stealing her memories. So he crossed the street. "Hey," he said, cautious. "You okay?" She blinked slowly, turned toward him, then whispered, "They took the lake." Jamal frowned. "The lake?" She nodded, more to herself than to him. "It was right here. There were lilies. And a bench. They took it." People kept walking. A woman glanced at Jamal, assumed he was bothering her, and pulled her kid closer. "I think you might be lost," Jamal said softly. The woman blinked again. "I'm Evelyn," she said, barely audible. It meant nothing to him. Just a name. But later, later, that name would mean everything. Right now it was just cold and getting darker. He scanned the street. A security guard was posted outside the bank 2 blocks down. A group of teens were laughing near the bus stop. No one looked twice at her. And that's what made him angry. "Do you know where you live?" he asked. "I had a house," she murmured. "The lake house. Then I went out, and I'm here." Jamal looked down at her hands. Pale, bony, but steady. She didn't look dirty. Her coat was old, but expensive. Her shoes matched. Her hair, though wild, was freshly washed. She didn't look like someone who lived on the street. She looked like someone who had been misplaced. Still, the sensible part of Jamal whispered, "This isn't your problem. You're tired. You're hungry. This could get weird. Call someone and walk away." But she was trembling. "I can call someone for you," he offered. "I don't know who," she said, eyes wet. And that's when something inside Jamal shifted. Not pity. Not guilt. Something deeper. The kind of ache that tells you, if you walk away now, part of you never comes back. He took a step forward, offered his hand. "Come on. Let's get you somewhere warm." She hesitated, then reached out. Her fingers curled around his like she was anchoring herself to the earth. It wasn't the grip of a stranger. Felt like trust. And just like that, it began. What Jamal didn't know, what no one knew, was that the moment Evelyn took his hand, his life was no longer ordinary. That tiny act of kindness, that simple decision to see her, would ripple across both their lives in ways neither could imagine. Because Evelyn wasn't just lost. She wasn't just old. She was someone the world had forgotten, and someone the world would soon remember. But first, Jamal would have to find out who she really was. Jamal led her gently across the street. She walked slowly, like each step required permission from her body. He had to pause at every corner, adjusting his stride to match hers. She never let go of his hand. A few people glanced. One woman gave him a long, suspicious look. Another rolled her eyes and muttered, "Kids these days, always looking for attention." Jamal clenched his jaw. He wanted to yell at them, ask why it was so hard to care about someone. But he didn't. He just focused on the old woman holding his hand like it was the only thing keeping her upright. They made it to a bench outside a closed coffee shop. He sat her down carefully. "You okay here?" he asked. She nodded, eyes scanning the street like it was a memory she was trying to place. "It's all gone," she said. "They replaced everything with glass and wires." "Do you remember what year it is?" Jamal asked gently. She squinted. "It was 89 or no, 2003. "No, that can't be right. The lilies hadn't bloomed yet." He looked at her, trying to decide. She didn't seem dangerous. She didn't even seem sick. Just misplaced in time. Jamal pulled out his phone. Maybe he should call someone. 911? Adult Protective Services? Would they treat her with respect? Would they even show up? He opened the dial screen, then stopped. She was looking at him again, with those same pale, distant eyes. "Do you believe in old souls?" she asked. Jamal blinked. "What?" "Sometimes," she whispered, "you meet someone who's not new, someone who's been here before. They recognize the world. They just don't always belong in it." He didn't know what to say, so he just nodded. She smiled. "You're one of them." A bus pulled up nearby, hissing. People loaded in. Someone shouted from across the street. A siren howled blocks away. Jamal looked at the city around them. Fast, cold, distracted. Then at her. Still, fragile and present. He shoved his phone back in his pocket. "All right," he said. "We're not calling anyone yet. First, let's figure this out." Her hand squeezed his. Jamal walked her down the street, past a bodega and a barber shop. He asked her questions. "What's your last name? Do you know what your house looks like? Who's your emergency contact?" To all of them, she gave the same answer. "The lake." He stopped walking. "Okay, we need to figure this out. Can you show me anything in your purse?" She hesitated, then slowly opened it. Inside was a silk handkerchief, a half-used lipstick, a wrapped butterscotch candy, and an antique silver locket. Jamal opened it. Inside was a picture, a much younger version of Evelyn, unmistakably her, standing in front of a grand house beside a still blue lake. Next to her, a man in a suit, holding her hand. There were initials engraved on the locket's edge. El. Ele. Jamal asked. She nodded. "Evelyn Langford." He froze. The name sparked something. He'd heard it before in a news article his teacher mentioned last year. Real estate. A recluse. Disappeared. Jamal stared at her. "You're that Evelyn?" She didn't answer. Just looked up at the sky and said softly, "They thought I was gone." Then she smiled. And for a brief moment, it wasn't the smile of a lost old woman. It was the smile of someone who had seen everything and was waiting for the right person to notice. They walked for over an hour. Jamal kept asking questions, trying to piece together anything that might make sense. But Evelyn's answers were like fragments of a shattered mirror, reflections that didn't quite line up. "There was a red swing," she said once. "He built it for me. It hung from the maple tree." Another time, she pointed to a pawn shop window and murmured, "My father's ring looked just like that. He gave it to me when I turned 16. He wrote everything down in the Notes app on his phone. Swing, lake, lilies, red door, maple tree, ring, house on a hill. Each clue felt important, but none of them led to anything concrete. Eventually, they stopped at a bench near a closed-up bookstore. Jamal was exhausted. Evelyn's head bobbed slightly. She was nodding off, her purse still clutched to her chest like it was all she had left in the world. He checked the time. Almost 9 p.m. His stomach growled. The temperature dropped. He should call the police. They'd know what to do, right? But deep down, he didn't trust that she'd be safe with them. Not because they were bad, but because she wasn't ordinary. Not in a bad way, but in a way the system didn't understand. She wasn't just confused. She was haunted. He could see it now in the way she looked at certain buildings like they used to be something else. In how she smiled at pigeons as if they carried messages. In how she told him, "Don't trust doors that close themselves." She was strange, but she wasn't wrong, and he wasn't ready to let her go. He called his best friend Israel. "You serious?" Israel asked, incredulous. "You want to bring a stranger to my house?" "She's not dangerous," Jamal insisted. "She's lost. I just need a place for her to rest tonight. Just one night." "Bro, what if she has dementia? What if something goes wrong? She doesn't belong out here. She's someone. I know she's someone." There was a long pause on the line. "You owe me a week of cleaning my PS5, Israel finally said. "Deal." They slipped into Israel's garage an hour later. Israel's parents were away on a trip, and he had the place to himself. Evelyn curled up on a couch draped in old blankets. She sighed like she hadn't sat down in a decade. Israel watched her like she was a ticking bomb. "You sure she's safe?" "She's just tired," Jamal said. He brought her tea. She thanked him and patted the seat next to her. "I used to have a cat," she said, sipping carefully. "His name was Henry. He hated everyone but me, even my husband. Where is he now?" She smiled. "Probably in charge of the afterlife." Jamal chuckled. Evelyn didn't say much after that. She stared at a crack in the ceiling like it was a memory unfolding. He checked her purse again, gently, respectfully. Aside from the locket, there was one more item tucked deep in a hidden side pocket. A gold brooch, encrusted with tiny diamonds in the shape of a swan. It had an engraving to Evelyn. "Love always, CL." Jamal's stomach flipped. He pulled out his phone and typed in the name. Results popped up instantly. Evelyn Langford, missing since 2017. Billionaire heiress to the Langford Realty empire. Last seen at her estate by Lake Bellevue. There were old photos. She looked younger, but it was definitely her. Same cheekbones. Same soft gray eyes. Jamal stared at the screen, then at Evelyn. Now peacefully asleep, tea still warm in her hand. "What was a billionaire doing walking alone through the city?" he muttered. He showed Israel the article. Israel's eyes widened. "Yo, you just found the lost Langford lady. But why didn't anyone recognize her?" Jamal asked. "She's been gone for years. People forget faces, especially old ones." Jamal sat in silence. If he turned her in now, would she be returned to family, lawyers, reporters,
Institution?
or would she be hidden away again, only this time not by choice? The city didn't deserve her, not after what he'd seen today. He looked at her again, this time not as someone fragile, but as someone sacred, a relic the world forgot to treasure. "Hey," Israel whispered. "You good?" Jamal nodded slowly. "Yeah, just thinking. What are you gonna do?" "I don't know," Jamal said. "But I know I'm not letting them hide her again." He sat beside her and whispered, "What do you want, Evelyn?" Without opening her eyes, she whispered, "I want to go home." Then she reached into her purse, pulled out a wrinkled napkin, and handed it to him. On it, a handwritten address, 33 Langford Lane. The next morning, Jamal borrowed Israel's bike and left Evelyn resting on the couch with breakfast and a blanket. He pocketed the napkin with the address, 33 Langford Lane. Google Maps said it was on the edge of the city, about 45 minutes away. He pedaled hard, heart racing the whole way. The neighborhood was nothing like where he lived. Wide streets, old trees, gated driveways, the kind of quiet that comes with money, the kind that silences things. He found the street, then the number. The mailbox was rusted, but the name Langford was still etched in cursive metal on the side. Weeds had overtaken the gravel drive. The windows of the house were dusty, curtains drawn, but the place wasn't abandoned. There were fresh tire tracks, and a security camera blinking red. Jamal walked up slowly, pretending to look for a lost dog. He didn't knock, just circled the perimeter. In the back, a fence was slightly ajar. He slipped through it and saw a garden, overgrown but elegant. A stone path led to a small dock by a lake. Lilies. There were lilies growing in the shallows. And by the dock, a single red swing hung from a huge maple tree, swaying gently in the breeze. It was all real, everything she said. He turned to leave, heart pounding, when a voice snapped behind him. "Can I help you?" A man stood near the house, holding a rake. Mid-50s, tall, broad shoulders, cautious eyes. Dressed like a groundskeeper, but his stance said authority. "I'm just looking for my dog," Jamal lied, instantly nervous. The man stared at him for a long second, then nodded slowly. "Well, keep looking." There was something in his tone that sent chills up Jamal's spine. He didn't wait. He got back on the bike and sped home. That night, he told Evelyn everything. She didn't say much, just smiled and whispered, "He didn't throw it away." "Who?" Jamal asked, but she had drifted off again. Jamal couldn't sleep. His mind spun with questions. Who was the man? Why hadn't anyone tried to find her? And why did she disappear in the first place? He opened the brooch again. To Evelyn. Love always CL. The initials didn't match her last name. He searched deeper and found an archived article. Charles Langford dies at 68. Billionaire real estate mogul leaves behind no heirs. The photo was blurry, but it looked like the man in the locket. No heirs? But Evelyn was his wife. Unless she wasn't legally anything anymore. Jamal sat back, mind racing. What if Evelyn had been cut out of everything? What if they erased her? He scrolled through more pages. Nothing listed Evelyn. Nothing. It was like she'd never existed. The next morning, he and Evelyn rode the bus back to Langford Lane. She was quiet the whole ride, clutching the locket in both hands. Her eyes looked clearer today, sharper. When they arrived, the same man was in the garden. Jamal approached him, this time without lying. I think she belongs here." The man's expression changed the second he saw Evelyn. He froze, then his lips tightened, and he whispered, "No, she can't be here." "She lived here," Jamal said firmly. "This is her house." "She did. But she was never supposed to come back." Jamal looked at Evelyn. Her eyes shimmered, not with confusion, but recognition. "I told you," she said softly. "He buried me before I died." The man stepped forward. "You should go." "She remembers this place," Jamal said, stepping in front of her. "She also remembers things that aren't real," the man said coldly. "She's not well. You don't know what you've brought here." "I know who she is." "Do you?" The man turned to Evelyn. "What year is it, Evelyn?" She smiled. "I remember you." He flinched, just a little. "You were Charles's brother," she said softly. "You used to bring him scotch and cover up his mistakes." "That's enough," he snapped. "You were always jealous," she said. "You wanted what he had, the house, the money, the name. And he gave it to me," the man growled. Jamal's eyes widened. The man paled. "You?" Jamal began. The man clenched his fists. "You don't understand what she's done. She disappeared. Left him. Left us, in ruins." "I was locked away," Evelyn said. "You signed the papers. You told them I was unstable. You were unstable. I was in grief. That's not the same." Jamal stood frozen. Everything was unraveling. He had walked into a family conspiracy bigger than anything he imagined. Evelyn reached into her coat and pulled out something else. A tiny key. "He gave me this the night before I vanished." The man's face turned stone. "That opens the safe in his study," Evelyn said. "The one only I knew about. You shouldn't have come back." "I had to." The air in the garden had changed. Jamal could feel it, heavy with history and the threat of buried truths. Evelyn held that tiny key in her trembling fingers like it was the last piece of her life she still owned. Gregory, Charles's brother, stood frozen. "If you open that safe," he said slowly, "you'll destroy what's left." "I'm not here to destroy," Evelyn replied. "I'm here to reclaim." She walked past him, spine straight, chin lifted. Her steps had the grace of someone who once owned marble floors. With Jamal beside her, they entered the house. It was colder than he expected. Still, airless. Dust floated through sunbeams like ghosts. Chandeliers hung like frozen breath. Every step echoed across marble floors that once heard music, laughter, betrayal. Evelyn walked with purpose. She stopped at a tall oak door on the left Charles's study. She turned the knob, creaked. Inside, the room was all dark oak and deep leather, untouched by time. Books lined the walls, locked behind glass. A globe rested in the corner. On the desk, a photo. Charles, smiling beside a younger Evelyn. She didn't look at it. She knelt before the fireplace. Behind the grate, behind a loose brick, she found it. A safe. Jamal knelt beside her. "That's it." She nodded and slid the key into the lock. Turned with a soft click. Inside were folders. Dozens. Yellowed. Some sealed. And one thick black journal. Evelyn opened it slowly. Charles's handwriting filled the pages. She flipped through pages of confessions, real estate scams, political bribes, offshore accounts. But then she paused. One entry. March 2017. Evelyn tried to leave. Couldn't let her. They'd take everything. The name. The empire. "I told Gregory she was unfit. We filed the papers." She screamed. "But the doctors listened to me." Her face turned pale. "Gregory. That's his brother." Jamal read it over her shoulder, stunned. "They committed you? So you couldn't take your share?" Evelyn nodded, a tear tracing her cheek. "I stayed with him even when the anger started. The drinking, the jealousy. But when I asked for space, he called it betrayal." She opened a folder labeled amendments. Inside were 2 wills. The first, dated 5 years before her disappearance. She was named sole beneficiary of the Langford estate and executor of Charles's trust. The second was newer, forged. The signature was off. The dates matched the week she went missing. It gave everything to Gregory Langford, citing Evelyn's permanent mental incapacity. "They erased you," Jamal said, voice low. "They tried." She reached deeper and found a letter, addressed to her. It was unopened. She broke the seal. It read, "If you're reading this, then somehow you made it back. I'm sorry. For all of it. I never meant to lose you, but fear is louder than love, and I let it win. If they buried you, I pray you still find your way home. I never stopped looking, just didn't know how. Forgive me, Charles." Evelyn clutched the letter like it was oxygen. Jamal stood, shaken. "We need to show someone. Take this public." "We will," she said. "But not yet." A sudden slam echoed downstairs. Jamal peered through the curtains. Gregory was outside, pacing. "Ho." Jamal grabbed the journal and folder. Evelyn tucked the letter into her coat. They slipped out the study's back door and into the garden. The lilies shimmered, the swing swayed, and they vanished into the trees. They ran until the trees swallowed the house, until the red swing disappeared behind the branches and the lake became a memory again. Jamal led Evelyn back toward the bus station, heart pounding. They took the long way, using alleyways and overgrown paths. Evelyn walked slowly but with clarity, her posture no longer hunched by confusion, but lifted by memory. She wasn't running away. She was heading forward. Back at Israel's house, they got to work. They scanned every document from the safe, every forged signature, every original clause. They uploaded high-resolution photos. Jamal's teacher, Mr. Grant, a former probate lawyer, reviewed it all. He called back an hour later. "Jamal," he said, his voice shaky with adrenaline. "This is real. This is enough to reopen the entire Langford estate." Evelyn was illegally removed from the trust. You just cracked open a fraud case that's been buried for years. Within 48 hours, Evelyn Langford's name reappeared on public records. A legal challenge was filed. The estate entered emergency probate review. And then the story hit the news. The headlines spread across every media platform. Missing heiress found after 7 years. Accuses family of institutional conspiracy. TV vans swarmed the block. Israel's mom, who had just returned from her trip, nearly fainted. Strangers offered money, support, and interviews. Jamal's phone didn't stop buzzing for days. But Evelyn stayed calm. When a major network asked for an exclusive, she agreed on one condition: that Jamal sit beside her. The cameras rolled. Evelyn wore a simple white blouse, her silver hair combed back, her eyes focused. "I wasn't lost," she told the world. "I was removed." The interviewer blinked. "What do you mean by removed?" She looked directly into the lens. "I was erased. My voice, my rights, my name." But truth has a way of resurfacing, especially when it's guided by kindness. The segment aired during prime time. Millions watched. People cried. People raged. People remembered her name. Gregory Langford held a press conference to deny everything. It backfired. Court records showed forged documents. The handwriting analysis was irrefutable. Doctors testified they were misled. Gregory was indicted on counts of fraud, coercion, and conspiracy. Within weeks, he was arrested. Evelyn didn't attend the trial. "Let the system that forgot me handle the man who erased me," she said. The Langford estate, house, assets, investments was returned to her name. But she didn't move back in. Instead, she turned the mansion into a nonprofit shelter for women recovering from institutional trauma, coercive abuse, and elder neglect. "It needs new stories," she told reporters. She named it the Red Swing Foundation. Jamal went back to school, but nothing felt the same. He wasn't just the quiet kid anymore. Teachers now saw him as a leader. Students whispered his name in awe. Opportunities flooded his inbox: interviews, podcast features, documentary offers. But he turned down almost all of them, except one. He posted a video titled, "The Lady with the Lake Eyes." It was just his voice, telling Evelyn's story exactly as it happened. Raw, unscripted, honest. It hit 1 million views in 3 days. Letters poured in from across the world. One was from a woman in Poland who said Evelyn's story gave her the courage to leave an abusive home. Another came from a nurse who confessed to helping silence patients and said she would never do it again. Artists sent portraits. Poets sent verses. And lawyers offered pro bono help for Evelyn's mission. One quiet morning, Evelyn stood at Jamal's doorstep with a request. "Will you take me back to the lake?" They rode in silence. She wore a long cream coat, the swan brooch pinned over her heart. The weather was soft. The wind carried the scent of lilacs. When they arrived, the lake shimmered like glass. Lilies bloomed in bright clusters, floating like memories on the surface. They stood at the edge of the dock. Jamal watched her walk forward, slow but steady, the same woman who was once mistaken for broken. She reached into her coat and pulled out the gold necklace, the swan pendant that once defined her status, and dropped it into the water. It vanished with a soft splash. "I don't need to wear my past," she whispered. "I carry it already, but I don't have to wear it anymore." Jamal asked her quietly, "What comes next?" She looked out over the lake, her eyes filled with light. "I finally have time to ask myself that question. But for now, let hope for the best." Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.